Welcome to the February 16th meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency and the Conservation Commission. And we've got folks on the screen all named. All right. Is there any public participation for an item that is not on our agenda? Thank you. All right, then we're on to permit extensions.
There's no permit extensions.
Your voice is very quiet there. I don't know if you can turn that up, Jeff.
I've tried. This is about the best I can do, I'm afraid.
Okay. Correspondence and reports.
None.
Bonds.
No bonds.
All right. We are on to the minutes. All right. We have some very long minutes. Did anyone have any comments or corrections to make?
I've got a correction, Barbara, for the members. I'm noted as a alternate still. So as of December, I received notice. There should be a regular status.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. So we got that.
Barb,
Yes.
the title, the meeting should be on the 2nd, not the 22nd, on the top of the page.
Good catch. All right.
And everywhere, let me find it here. Wherever we reference the state regulations,
Yes.
you know, we made it 33 large G, small 1. It should be 8-3.
Yeah.
Small G in brackets 1. I'm sure somebody figured it out, but you know,
That's
how
the way
Connecticut regs are. They just work in off of major areas. So it occurs a bunch of places.
Okay, so we'll ask to have that global change made.
Okay.
All right. And I just think there's a word at the bottom of page 3. Kelly states there should be separate bonds for the two. Separate bond for infiltration basin, I think, should be in there. And planting, which is just to make that clear what we were talking about. And there was one. And on page 4, I remarked P&Z would look at the landscape plans and look for bonding. Period. Then it says they would be bonding. I think that implies that it's EZC. It's really IWC would be bonding the ENS and infiltration basin. So I would change they to IWC. Then at the end of that section, Chair Kelly asks if all in favor of the motion as presented to approve the application. I think we need some punctuation. The motion was to approve the application, and then I just called for all in favor, all opposed, and all abstaining. So I guess
could that just be summed up as Chair Kelly called for a vote?
I think that would be best. That would be clearest, so it doesn't sound as if I was lobbying one way or another. don't know what to, pardon? I can't, Gina, I can't hear you. Somehow you're either partially muted or,
No, can you hear me at all?
now we can.
Okay. Just wanted clarification.
I can't.
Okay.
Talk
I
towards
don't-
this.
I don't know what's happening. Seems to be going in and out, maybe.
Okay, and I would say, just in general, we could probably have a little bit more summarization in the minutes rather than trying. Because I think like's happening right now, I think sometimes words cut in and out, and listening and trying to get exact quotes can almost paint a less clear picture of what's happening, so. Maybe if Jeff, I don't know, could help on some of that for the next time, or I'm happy to. But anyway, yeoman's work to put out the document. Thank you for that. Okay.
Hey, Barb, I have one other very
Okay.
minor
Yes,
typo.
thank you.
On page 5, second paragraph, approval that are not. It says RE, kind of implying reference or something. Do you see that? Page 5, second paragraph.
The statute,
Yeah, the statute requires, right. Further on second line, for an approval that are not consistent, I think, rather than reference RE.
oh, yes.
It's missing a letter. It's a minor thing, missing a letter.
Yeah,
I wonder why spell check doesn't catch that.
I don't know.
But I like to say that, you know, especially, I'm going to regret saying this, but when the lawyers are talking, it's good to always look at what they actually said, because it's in words and phrases that we aren't familiar with, and it's always nice to go back and look at actually what they said.
Right.
So
And
I think the
there's-
minutes are great. You're working too hard, though.
Yeah, 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 I think especially in that kind of a case, you know, giving a summary statement of what they said, if somebody needs the details of the particular words. Because otherwise, when we approve it in their minutes, and if it's slightly off, we could be giving a slant to something that we really are just hearing. Yeah, all right. So with the number of corrections, maybe should we have a vote to approve the minutes, or just do you want to do it like we usually do as per consensus with the corrections? How does the commission feel?
Consensus sounds fine.
Okay,
Second here.
all right. So if there's no objections, we'll have an approval to the minutes as corrected by consent. The approval is by consensus. Great, thank you. All right, Conservation Commission.
Nothing to report from the Conservation Commission at this time.
If I had one question, at an earlier meeting, we had said we would write a letter requesting that Parks and Rec do something about the screening on the wildlife sanctuary property. Have we had an answer to that?
No, but I'll follow up on it and report at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Right, Wetland Officer.
Well, nothing much to report other than, as folks who've been going by can see, Pleasant Valley School is pretty much in process at this point in time. We've been keeping an eye on it, but obviously everything's pretty frozen. But they've been doing a pretty good job at keeping up on maintaining the erosion controls at this point.
Very good. Yeah, it has been something with the freeze thaws. Right. Okay. All right, if that's it, no public hearing, we are on to new business. Application 2206P, People's Bank, 251 Buckland. Is there anyone waiting to enter the meeting for that application?
Yes, we do have a list of attendees, and basically all of the attendees that are on that list will be participating in the presentation. So I believe that Mike is adding them right now.
Good.
Hey,
All right. I welcome all the folks who have just joined the meeting from application 2206P. All right.
thank you.
Welcome. Is there someone in particular who's going to start? Okay, Mr. Fisher. All right.
I will start it out and pass it off quickly to the engineers who can speak knowledgeably. So my name is Jay Fisher from AccuBranch. We represent the interests of People's Bank of Holyoke on this application. And as by way of background, the bank is acquiring the 5.5 acres at the corner of Buckland and Cedar, between Buckland and Evergreen, or whatever its name has been changed to in the last couple of months. And they plan to put their branch on the corner, the northeastern corner between Cedar and Buckland, observing the setbacks, et cetera. And right now, that is all that we are looking to permit. It'll be a phased development. The bank will take opportunities to develop the rest of it as opportunities present themselves. It could be quickly, and it could be a long-term project. But either way, they will come back in phases for each step of the way as necessary. Part of the effort with putting the branch in the corner means that some of the overall site has to at least be planned out pretty well so that we know where stormwater is going, because it all slopes from that northeast corner down to the southwest corner. So we have to know, how things could lay out. And if it's only built for the bank, so be it. And it may get modified or pipes moved or what have you, or if they need to be at the appropriate time, if something else happens or the next user comes along. But for the purposes of this meeting, we are looking to, we're here to apply for the permits for just the bank branch as it is proposed. And we have some of the surrounding areas as placeholders and concepts. The civil engineering group with the soil scientists, et cetera, on staff is SLR, formerly Mylone McBroom, and Darren Overton and Jonathan Luster are the two engineers on the call. I think you guys are on the call, and I will turn it over to them to walk you through the impacts and the application. And any questions for me on the overall?
Any questions?
I guess a quick question. I guess you bought the whole piece of property.
Correct.
And the application that's going before us has a lot of it's detailed over the whole anticipated full-out development. Is that right?
I'll let the engineers answer that in more detail, but we had to anticipate how things could happen so that we weren't having to totally duplicate everything every time a new phase came in. But I'll let the engineers speak to that specific question. It's a good question, but I'll let them.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Darren or Jonathan? You have to unmute, guys.
I also don't have video on.
Now they said, I see Jonathan is there.
Darren was there, but he seems to have dropped off.
No, I see him up there at the top of my
Darren
list.
appears to be muted at this point in time.
Oh, there he is. Okay, yes, I see.
I know I was while you guys were in your business meeting, I got a text. Come on, you guys, and an email from them.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
there you are.
Yes.
Okay, hi, this is Darren. Sorry, I didn't realize I had to unmute my phone and the screen. I switched audio to my phone because I had some trouble hearing everybody when I first logged in, so apologize for that. Glad you can hear me now. Thanks for the introduction, Jay. My name is Darren Overton from SLR Consulting, like Jay said, formerly Mylona McBroom. Also from SLR with me tonight is Jonathan Luster. He was the principal design engineer on the project, and Matt Sanford, who's a soil scientist and wetland scientist with our office, who reflagged the water course along the southern boundary. I have served as the project manager for the project, and I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Do I have the ability to share the screen and present some maps?
Yes, and now I don't know if they have to do something to allow that, but I know that's typically what we expect, so.
When I hit the share button, nothing seems to happen.
Yeah. I don't get anything either.
Jeff, can you request that something?
Coming up now. Okay. Let me know when you can see the screen. Should be a map.
It has come up. The plan the first plan sheet.
Well, fantastic. This was the plan set that was submitted as part of the application. This is the cover sheet. And I'm just going to do an overall presentation. I'll start with existing conditions. I have an existing aerial. I'm pretty sure everybody here is familiar with the site, but I'll go over it just in case anyone is unfamiliar. After that, I'll just talk briefly about the wetlands on site, which is a water course that runs through along the southern boundary, and then just go over the proposed development. So the property is located here. This is the intersection of Buckland and Cedar. It's the property in here that's also surrounded by Evergreen Way in the back. This is a 5.78 acre parcel. It's in a gateway development zone. So to the north is Cedar Street. North is straight up on the map here. To the south is the intermittent water course. You see the wooded area along the edge here. The intermittent water course runs from a cross culvert pipe under Buckland, flows along the southern property line towards another cross culvert under Evergreen Way. Essentially serves as a southern boundary of the property. To the east is Buckland Street. To the west is Evergreen Way. And what doesn't show on here now is there's actually a Costco in back further to the west. This area is a bit old in that it shows a couple of existing structures here that have been demolished and no longer exist. But the rest of what you see here is essentially very similar to what's out there on the site. There's this open meadow area in the middle. There's a few trees that I believe still remain out there that were associated with the prior homes that were here. And then we still have this wooded corridor along the southern boundary associated with the water course. The topography of the site is gently sloping. As you can imagine, it slopes towards the water course. So the highest point is actually up here in the northeast corner near the intersection of Buckland and Cedar. That's at an elevation of about 153. And that gently slopes over here to the south and to the west towards the water course to the low point at the cross culvert at Evergreen Way that I mentioned previously. And that cross culvert based on the survey, has an invert of 125. So the slope goes from 153 down to the lowest point is 125 at that cross culvert. Along this boundary is the intermittent water course that was flagged by our soil scientist, Matt Sanford, back on August 2nd of 2021. The delineation that was provided on the mapping is generally consistent with the 2003 delineation that was done by Kurt Olson. There's wetland flags that were numbered on the south side from 1 to 16, if anybody ventured out in the field to look at that. And then there's also a series of wetland flags delineating the water course on the north side that are series from 101 to 116, and they start the lower numbers here by Evergreen and go up towards Buckland. So on our plans, this commission recognizes not only the wetlands or water courses themselves, but an 80-foot upland review area, which we have outlined on our plans. We have a proposed upland review area disturbance of 7,600 square feet, and there's some clearing associated with this development along here up to what we understand is a 40-foot setback from the water course that was established as part of prior permitting with DEEP. So we have not gone beyond that setback line, and that shows in our limits of construction on the plans. The basic functions and values that were identified in the soil report are stormwater conveyance in the water course, sediment retention, and there's some limited wildlife habitat along here. But there were no wetland soils identified as part of the delineation. They're all upland soils, but the channel that is here has a width to it, and therefore is flagged as a water course with some width to it at the top of banks. That's why we have flags on both sides. Anybody have any questions regarding any of the existing conditions? If not, I'll move on. So next I have a proposed rendering. And I understand there was a little bit of confusion with how we represented what is future development on the plans versus what is really the subject of this application. And Jay, mentioned a little bit of it in his introduction. Part of the reason we needed to show the overall development is because we have a storm drainage system that, while our proposed development for the bank is in the northeast corner, basically the farthest away from the water course, there's a need to discharge our stormwater to that water course. So we've got to run the pipe system through the future development area. Also, as part of our stormwater management, which I'll go into more detail later, we needed to analyze basically a full build out of development so that we could design this for the water quality flow for the site. So our computations consider all of this future development in the stormwater narrative that we provided. So that was kind of another driving factor. But what is subject of the application tonight is the bank application, which is we've left highlighted here in the rendering, and in the shaded part of it is really the part that's considered future development that won't be developed at this time. We're proposing the bank here. It's a 2,000 square foot bank that's anticipated to be used by People's Bank, who is the applicant. We have 15 parking spaces that are conveniently located near the front door on the south side of the building. There is one accessible space that is right next to the entrance to the building. We have proposed access road coming off of Cedar. This is a restricted right in, right out access. And then that access road comes in, provides access to the bank entrance here, and then actually loops through the site out to Evergreen, where we have a full access at Evergreen for access to this subject parcel. The overall site, as you can see, we have some landscaping that's proposed here. It's landscaped with a mix of native trees, shrubs. There's some lawn area around the perimeter of the parking lot. And then the remainder of the area that's undisturbed will remain meadow, or that wooded corridor here along the water course will be undisturbed as well. And you can see on here the water course is highlighted in the green. So that's the actual delineation of both sides representing top of bank on each side of the water course. As far as the landscaping, we have some maple trees creating kind of a street tree type of layout up in front here. On Buckland, we have some arborvitae over here along Cedar, and then internally we're proposing some, I believe they're elm trees along here. And then there's also a couple of dogwoods that kind of frame the entrance here. There's foundation plantings, which are shrubs and various mixed vegetation around the building itself, and then another small landscape bed framing the entrance into the proposed bank facility itself. The proposed project will be served by public water and sewer. Public water comes in off of Cedar here, and there's also a gas line that comes in to serve the building. We do show some utilities coming in here for future development as well. And then the sewer will connect to the proposed bank building that comes in from the west off of Evergreen. It's going to run through this proposed access drive up to the bank, and then we'll also provide stubs for future development. Power is anticipated to come to the bank from an existing pole up here on the corner of Buckland and Evergreen. And then we have water that loops through the site to provide water service to not only the bank, but also the other proposed uses in the future. So the last thing I'd like to do is just talk briefly about stormwater management and the sediment and erosion control plan. The 2007 development plan that was part of the overall development of this area included this as Unit 5 in the overall stormwater management plan, and it identified this parcel as an area that was not required for stormwater detention. So the stormwater management for our project does not look at peak flow analysis. It looks at water quality protection regarding the proposed impervious surfaces mainly. So we've designed the system for water quality using the water quality flow, which is standard in the deep water quality manual. We have an offline hydrodynamic separator that's located down in this area. So the collection system for not only the bank and the access roads, but there's a potential collection system that's come up here for future parking areas for other uses, ties in, and there's a hydrodynamic separator here, which has been sized for the planned overall development of the whole site. And then peak flows will bypass. We have a proposed level spreader that's about 50 feet long along the edge of that 40-foot setback, where the flows will come in, spread out along that level spreader, and then create basically a low velocity sheet flow that will then flow through the vegetated area that is proposed to remain and into the water course, then continuing to flow off to the west towards that cross culvert under Evergreen. So there's the blue, that light blue that's highlighted here is the proposed catch basin and pipe collection system that will suck the surface water and bring it to that proposed stormwater discharge. Last part is we prepared an erosion sediment control plan here. ENS plan is relatively simple since at this point we're only disturbing the proposed 1.24 acres of total disturbance. So we have perimeter silt fence to surround the areas of disturbance. We propose inlet protection for the catch basins once the storm drainage system starts to go in. We have construction entrance pads, so either of these proposed entrances can be used for construction access. And we have topsoil stockpiles that we've designated in an area here that is basically going to be utilized. We anticipate a portion of this might be used as a laydown area for construction for the contractor. So that may be more detailed than was necessary on this, but I just wanted to go through some of our thought process and try to clarify what's proposed as part of this application relative to the bank, as well as, the future development that we've considered as part of our stormwater management for the property. So with that, I'll end my presentation, and if anybody has questions, myself or others be happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Dick?
I'd like a little bit of clarification, on on the full build out. Because there's a reasonable amount of impervious just from looking at the site. I didn't see the reference anywhere, and since this is a sold lot, not a part of now the Evergreen, I'm suspecting that's why we're not using the water treatment plan or the stormwater management plan for Evergreen site with their catch basins or their retention basins. And so now we're looks like we're going to be sheet flowing water down the slope into the existing water course. Can you just speak a little bit to the, the impervious full build out potential, as well as, again, the velocity of flows that we may anticipate out of the hydrodynamic?
I can answer some of those questions.
That was a lot, sorry about that.
That was, but good stuff. So even though this is a purchase, it's a purchase of a condo, if you will. It's still part of the association. It's still part of Evergreen, and the stormwater system, the detention basins downstream of this intermittent water course are the stormwater detention management system that this is all part of. So it's included in that whole calculation of stormwater, of traffic, of sewage, regular water, potable water, et cetera. So it's all has to work within the Evergreen system. As to the impervious, total impervious, it's driven by an interest in the south east corner of a potential user that we've been discussing with, and it's a placeholder square down there of a certain size, and it really is a capacity calculation of retail users of various types, driven by how many square feet require how much parking, and therefore, what's your max effective build out from, and that could shift substantially depending on who the actual users end up being. And we have to conform to impervious coverage ratios. I'll let Darren address that, but as it sits right now, we don't have anybody else there. I can tell you that with the purchase of the property, Evergreen pushed a bunch of capacity onto this site, which they will ultimately get back what isn't used. But there was by acquisition, not by permits, but by acquisition right, we could build up to 60,000 square feet, no more than 40,000 of which would be retail. That's not a practical number. It was a nonsensical sort of thing, but from their perspective, yeah, you could put structured parking and you could put, stuff over the top, and let's not get carried away. So we went through an analysis to be able to size the utilities and stormwater to meet a reasonable or practical max build out, or anticipated build out, not really max, but anticipated build out. It could change, but it still has to be parked, and it have to have coverage. Darren, you'll have to talk to the velocity issues and things like that.
Sure. Thanks for the background, Jay. So as Jay mentioned, this is still part of the overall Evergreen Walk development and that overall master plan that was originally permitted. So we looked at the stormwater study that was done, and I believe as part of that overall development, there was detention provided in other areas to offset the flows coming through this water course. The detention is provided further to the west to serve this property. So that is taken care of in detention basins that are already constructed. And so we just need to deal with, according to their original management plan for the stormwater, we need to deal with water quality, which we've dealt with through the hydrodynamic separator and size that based on the amount of impervious that's proposed for what we show here is an ultimate build out, whether it's fictitious or not. It's probably not what's going to be developed, but when that does come to fruition, we will have a more definite plan that will be part of an application, and our stormwater calculations will be checked to that. But we believe the hydrodynamic separator is sized now for a full build out that is likely more than what will be built in the future. So it's a little bit conservative. As far as velocities, that's why we have a 50-foot wide level spreader there. So we've looked at the velocities coming out of there, and what we want to achieve is we want to spread that flow out in a very thin layer over that 50 feet. There's I believe we have a concrete curb that can be set level. The level spreader itself is lined with riprap, and then there's a concrete curb that will spread that flow out. The contractor has a much better chance of setting the curb and making it level than trying to create an earthen berm. We found that this works better to have the concrete curb, and then the depth of flow is so shallow that we're at non-erosive velocities once it flows over that curb.
And what's the slope of below that concrete curb?
That's an excellent question. So if we look at the existing conditions map here, these represent the contours across here. Jonathan, any chance you know what this slope is from here down to the water course just outside of that 40-foot area?
I do not, but I could get it while on
know,
this call.
I don't have a full-size plan, or I'd be taking the scale out. All right. All right.
Are those 2-foot contours from here, or are they 1-footers?
Those are 2-foot contours. So it's about a 4-foot drop here, I would say, over about 40 feet.
So we know we're outside of 40, so, right.
That's about a 10% slope.
10%. So that'll be for watching.
Yeah, one of the things that once the snow finally left, I was able to go out there, and it does seem that the flows as they exit the level spreader are going to tend to head to the southwest, as opposed to heading straight in a unified flattened flow towards the water course. So I guess I do have a concern that we could still get some concentration of flows once it leaves the level spreader. And is there something that can be done to mitigate that? Possibly, the understory there is pretty much just a kind of a wider spread shrub layer with bare dirt underneath. So perhaps there could be something to be done to provide a little bit more ground cover to stabilize the soil on its travel from the level spreader and ultimately to the channel.
So that's also a good point. As you can see, there's going to be a little bit of clearing here. So I think once we clear this out and open up the sunlight there, one thing we could do, we could rake in a seed mix on the downstream side. Once this vegetation is cleared, that'll probably provide enough sunlight here to establish some better ground cover underneath that shrub base that's there. So we certainly be willing to do that, to work with Matt Sanford to recommend a seed mix to go in there that could be raked in.
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of autumn olive along the riparian boundary there, which isn't invasive, and I don't think we'd cry if some of that were removed and then possibly replaced with another type of planting.
That certainly fine with that. Yeah, I battle autumn olives in my yard, and that would be a good thing to remove. Matt, I don't know if you want to mention anything about maybe doing a field visit during construction to flag some invasives to be removed, and we can talk about putting together a seed mix to go in there and some procedures for the contractor to follow.
Yeah, just for the record, it's Matt Sanford, certified, our registered soil scientist and professional wetland scientist with SLR. Yeah, I certainly, we can do that, Darren. As just Darren suggested, we can go out there and flag the exact area. There's autumn olive clusters and multiflora rows in combination along this corridor, so we can certainly take a look at the area just down gradient from our level spreader to see how we can increase the herbaceous community, as well as potentially plant some native shrubs as well to slow water down.
Deeper, yeah, some deeper rooted.
Yep, as it comes off of the level spreader. So yeah, that's certainly something we can do.
Sure.
Good. And while Jeff, well, okay, yeah, I guess Dick wants there, and Jeff, I think, needs to speak too, and maybe to the issue of trap hoods, but. So Dick, do you want to, you've had your hand up multiple times.
I went out there and looked at it today, and you know, this level spreader that's gonna take the water potentially from the 5 acres and put it in the creek that's there. And I'm just wondering what kind of, you know, you're gonna substantially increase the flow. I mean, you know, we know that we have issues with that drainage system to begin with on the other side of Buckland. It just seems to me that it's going to be a lot of flow that's going to have to pass through those, I think they're 30-inch, you know, conduits that go under the first crossing. And, you know, that amount of, you would think the amount of flow there's going to be, it's going to be a lot of undercutting. Is there a need to be some hardening of the stream down from where this water is going to come in? That's one question. The other question I have is, who said that this property didn't need detention? You know, detention is you know, you want two things when you develop property. You want to eliminate pollutions, and you want to minimize any increase in off-site flow. And this is what I would consider off-site for a while anyway, you know, until it gets down to the wetlands area, which you might say then is a detention basin. But I can't help but think this Unit 5 was going to tie into whatever the LA Fitness tied into, and that's how they sold it. I could be totally wrong, but you know, it just seems to me that, you know, why would you leave a 5+ acre parcel of land that didn't need any detention? It goes against everything we've ever done in the past. That's my comment.
I can speak a little bit, and Darren, you could backfill from the review. I read, I'm not the technical person here, but I read through all the wetlands permits, the various ones that were done for Evergreen over the period of its 20+ years of development, and talked with John Fingera and Alan Lamson and everybody else that is on that crew over there. And they all repeatedly said, and the documentation supported, that the whole of the stormwater management system of Evergreen includes how the stormwater was to be managed on this 5 acre piece, and it's part of the detention system that's further to the west. And it was all sized appropriately, at least according to everything I could read. Darren, you got anything else to add to that?
So no, I agree, Jay. We didn't read the whole voluminous report. We just focused on what was related to this property, and the overall management plan, you know, considered various strategies, and they planned ahead for certain build out of certain areas and built detention ahead of the build out of certain parcels. And, you know, typically it's best to look at these developments as a whole. You're better off to have an overall strategy with larger basins that serve the purpose better than having individual basins, you know, on each 1 or 2 acre parcel. It's better to have an overall strategy. And I'll just mention one thing. We don't always put detention on properties. It's very common that we do. But I'm working on a 100-acre development right now that's going to have multi-unit apartment buildings, retail, and basically where the site is located, it's in the lower part of the watershed on a FEMA mapped floodplain that leads into another larger river. And we're not proposing any detention on the site because we've looked at the watersheds of both of the rivers, and because of the location of the site, if we actually detain and hold back the water, we'd be increasing the flood flows. So there's certain situations, and this, what we're doing there follows the DEP design manual and had been reviewed at one time by the DEP and Army Corps. So there are situations where, and that they're not common, but there are situations where we do not propose detention on properties. In this particular case, we're following the stormwater management plan that was developed for this. And I didn't do all the background work, but I've looked at and reviewed what was planned as part of this, and we followed the recommendations of it. So I don't know if that helps, but you know, that's some of the work that we did as part of this project, and you know, relating to some of the other projects I've worked on regarding some projects that just detention doesn't apply.
I guess this is where institutional memory comes in, but I believe that when they modeled this site for stormwater, they used the culverts at Clark Street by the pump station as the control point. So that's where they would gauge where pre and post flows would impact that area. So I think what they did is they designed the detention on the entire site to balance out the flows at that control point downstream. And that's why some portions of the site are detained and other portions of the site aren't detained.
That's my recollection as well, Jeff.
I would agree with that, because if I remember, some areas were over detained and other areas were under detained, but in the aggregate, it came out to have the proper controls in Flood Gully, Plum Gully Brook.
To speak to what I think Dick is getting at is that then that means that flows will be just leaving the site, you know, really without, just kind of as the rain falls type thing. And so the concern would be, will there be any erosion in that intermittent, either down the bank or in that intermittent water course as it proceeds down toward the detention basin? So maybe we
Barb,
could either get it.
Barb,
Yes?
what I was thinking, there's a big detention basin behind Costco's.
Correct, that this one.
And to me, it seemed like that's where everything was going to go. And now this parcel is being developed, and they're doing, you know, a flow spreader to get rid of the water into a stream that probably was never considered to handle any of that water. You know, I would think like LA Fitness, they dump a lot of their water, except for a couple of, you know, parking lot swales, into that detention basin that's on the other side of Costco's. And I can't help but think that's maybe that parcel went along for the ride. I have no problem with the level spreader and all. All I'm saying is it's a big piece of property. Well, 5 acres isn't small. And that stream that's there is marginal at best now. And if you go out and look at it, you add a lot of water to that stream, it's just going to back up. It's got to be cleaned out or something, but it's not a very efficient way of getting the water from that property down to the wetlands area, which I like, but we got to worry about how we get it there. That's all I'm saying.
You're concerned the crossing under Evergreen Way.
Right.
Being a constriction,
or anything from there till it gets to the wetlands where it gets dissipated. The flow volume has got to be a factor. You know, I'm not saying it won't work, but I'm just concerned that can the stream handle it? Can the condition that it's in now handle it? Do we need something to make it more robust or something? Like I said, I look at your build out plan, and all I see is impervious coverage. And I don't know how you calculated a 46% impervious coverage number, but it's got to be 75, 80%. So that's for another day, I think, because you're only concerned about the bank now. But when you build a system, you need to build it with a pretty good idea where you want to go with the whole property.
So maybe we could get a comment from the wetland scientist about the stability of the channel, the stream, the intermittent watercourse channel itself.
To handle the flows,
below the site.
Analysis, the report that was done was more on flow rates than volumes. So, we need to look at that. I looked at the report, and it's got a new fancy, water quality hydrodynamic separator, but it's more than that. It does other things, which is good. But it's sized just for flow rates, not for volumes. And I think we need to concern ourselves with, how much water is going to be coming off. And obviously the bank property would not be enough to really cause a lot of concern, but the total build out would be. And I think we just need to make sure that we got that covered.
Well, thank you. We'll take another look at that, certainly as we come back for other phases in the project. I agree with you that the bank isn't going to be the trigger here. And we'll have Matt weigh in unless you want to weigh in now, but also Alan Lamson, who knows the details of this, and in terms of all the downstream stormwater. This is intermittent at best watercourse, driven by the runoff from Buckland more than anything else, I think, and maybe a little bit beyond that. But it was part of the original stormwater management plan for whole of Evergreen, and the detention was sized to accommodate this piece of property. Cedar was one of the 3 original access points to the project, as I understand it, or as it was expressed to me, and therefore this was not just a cutoff from LA Fitness. It was something else. It ended up being a standalone parcel, and always has been. It actually used to be, I say that and then reverse myself. It used to actually go further west. The parcel went further west. They chopped off a couple acres of what was known as Unit 5 that were on the west side of Evergreen to make this parcel actually smaller and give those acres over on that side to Costco to assemble enough land on the west side to accommodate the Costco needs over there. So it's actually a little bit smaller than the original Unit 5, but as I said, it was part of the original stormwater plan and balanced out.
Barb,
So if I could just add, what's interesting also, Jay, is the only catch basin that's along the roadway that we could tie into is over here on Cedar, where none of the site actually drains to now. You can see based on the contours, all of the site drains either towards the watercourse itself or towards Evergreen Way, and there aren't even any catch basins on this side of Evergreen Way. So there was no plan based on the drainage system for any of this to tie in, it appears, to that storm drainage system. And it's interesting that while we talk about this being an intermittent watercourse, there's 2 30-inch pipes there, twin pipes, with a head wall that convey the water under Evergreen, which that's quite a bit of capacity with 2 30-inch pipes. So they must have anticipated a relatively, or calculated a relatively high level of flow to put, that large size of dual pipes in here. But I agree, we can certainly look at this in the future development. Our only other option than creating the level spreader and getting into the stream here would be to try and tie in a pipe into one of these 30-inch cross culverts at a manhole here.
And that still wouldn't address downstream stability in terms of erosion in the stream channel before it hits the basin. So, all right, Jeff, I know you had further comments, and maybe we're going to also address trap hoods being missing from catch basins.
Yeah, so I guess just to continue this conversation, that west of those culverts, and I can't quantify the amount, but there was some hard armoring that was done to that channel with gabion baskets a number of years ago. And then also, I believe that area even further west is the subject of the soft armoring that was done with the core logs by Costco. So I think if this development on this site goes forward, that certainly could be cataloged and determined how that can mitigate some of the flows here and maintain any kind of a stream channel conformity when you do interject increased flows. But yeah, Barb, the one thing that I didn't add in my review that I should have is it probably would be appropriate to incorporate trap hoods as well in the catch basins. That way we're not relying completely on the hydrodynamic separator to capture floatables and hydrocarbons. That can be done incrementally through the site. Well, but I do agree that the ENS plan that is being proposed is adequate to contain sediments on the site during the construction phase on it. And that's it.
All right, and with the screen share here, I can not only see two of the commissioners. So if someone else, is there another commissioner who wants to speak? I'm trying to click through everybody. Paul, or where are we? Paul, you're shaking your head.
I've got one more comment that might be suitable for Darren, and it's the and you may have already mentioned this, but it's the soils on the lot. And was there any consideration for infiltration on the site versus catch basin piping to the to the 50-foot level spreader? And I understand the hydrodynamic separator will slow some flows, but just wanted to, if there was any infiltration taken into consideration based on soil conditions.
Yeah,
or if that's
sure.
potential for future build out.
Yeah, we do as a basis like to consider infiltration. And you can see on this existing conditions plans, there's 6 borings that were done on the site. So we had some geotechnical work done early on in the project, and that gave us an indication of the types of soils. We always look at the NRCS soil survey, which gives us basic information, but there's really no substitute for actual, test pits or borings on the site. So we did have actual information from the site. And what we found is there's about 3 to 4 feet of fill. So majority of the soils here, in every one of these borings that we did, there's 3 or 4 feet of disturbed material on top, which doesn't bode well for infiltration. But then we also found that in some of these borings, there was shallow groundwater at about 3 feet. So while I don't fully agree with the DEP stormwater manual on separation to groundwater, it's generally understood that you don't want to try and infiltrate directly into stormwater, directly into a groundwater condition for fear of contaminating the groundwater. You know, here there's less of a concern with that because we have public water, and you know, before that groundwater were to break out into the stream channel, it would likely get filtered through the soil anyway. But for those reasons, we avoided infiltration because of the amount of disturbed fill on the site and the shallow groundwater table. So unfortunately, that really wasn't a good option here.
Thank you.
And the stormwater report, you know, indicates a lot of reliance on the 2007 work that was done. You know, since then, there's become the recognition that of the more frequent, more intense rainfall. And have you taken any of that into account in your sizing the hydrodynamic separator? Or you're still just looking to capture that initial bit in that separator?
We did use the higher rainfall tables as part of sizing the storm drainage system and the hydrodynamic separator for calculating the water quality flows. The DOT has adopted those higher rainfall numbers, and that's what we use across the board for all our designs now. I think they've been generally adopted by everyone at this point.
Okay, good. Okay, then it just was the comment in this report then just led me down the other way when you kind of were saying you were relying on the 2007. So I feel good knowing you used the newer numbers. All right. Anyone? So I can't, John, I can't see, or Art, either of you have a comment? Or Paul or Jim? Oh, there, I got the screen to it. Dan, question? Okay. And Jeff, any further questions? Is that a? And to the applicant, do you have any further presentation?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Not from my end. We've submitted all the plans, et cetera, so you have them. So nothing from here. Thank you.
All right, and we did receive the revised plans electronically and take a look at that, so, okay.
Yeah, those revisions were in response to the questions that Jeff had sent over.
Okay, yep. And do you have a response to the comment about trap hoods being added?
I would not be opposed to adding those in. I prefer to use them on the most upstream basins, and once we get into larger pipes, if it's on a trunk line, I prefer not to use them just because of the concern. I don't want the trunk line clogging. But certainly the basins around the bank, those initial basins, I don't see any issue with adding the hoods there if the commission would like to see them.
Thank you. Then if we could finish the screen share so we can get everyone back. Confer.
I will stop sharing.
Thank you.
Hey.
John, did you have a question? You're lighting up. No. All right. So, would anyone like to make a motion about this application so that we can have commission discussion?
Okay, I'll move to approve application 22-06P. Standard terms and conditions. Bonding, Jeff?
I'd recommend bond for establishment and maintenance of erosion control of $10,000 and a bond for installation of the stormwater structures of $15,000.
Okay. Additional conditions I see based on the discussion. Area downgraded from the level spreader to the water course shall be cleared of invasives and planted to assure stabilization and proper sheet flow. Plan to be approved by town staff. And the second one, trap hood shall be installed on catch basins as appropriate. Plan to be reviewed and approved by town staff. Did any other commissioners see other conditions they felt should be added to this application?
Second the motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All right, now is there any discussion?
And my thoughts are, in general, the plan looks pretty good, especially with a few things like assuring that we're not going to get the erosion and problems between the level spreader and the water course. We do, as a commission, need to remember to keep our eyes open as further buildup comes in to assure and look at the condition of the water course downstream of this. But that would be on future applications.
Isn't that part of Evergreen's problem?
You're breaking up a little bit on that, Paul.
Doesn't Evergreen control that aspect of it? Where the stormwater goes? Isn't that part of Evergreen's deal?
But if we are approving erosion and sediment control on future build outs, you know, we have to address the likelihood erosion caused by that, you know, in the water course. So whether the arrangement would be that Evergreen repairs it or this new owner repairs, that won't be for us, but we would certainly have to have that assessed and assign an accountability to have it corrected. At least that's my thought. And you know, to clarify, we will expect, you know, E&S plan should any future, this approval is going to relate to the E&S plan for the actual proposed build out at this point. Right. The applicant made it clear in their presentation and on the thing that really what we're approving now is the 1.25 acres for the bank build out.
Should we add that as a condition to just verify? So yes. I propose an added condition to the that this application and permit shall apply only to the bank building and the associated build out as required for the bank building.
Or as shown as actual construction. Yeah.
Yeah. As presented at this meeting.
And Paul, as the second, would you agree that it's a friendly amendment to add that to the?
Yes, I agree.
So we have a slightly modified motion. that we're discussing. I would agree with Jeff as he had commented that that the ENS measures as presented in the updated plan are appropriate for the site with the modification to address erosion downstream of that level spreader or downslope, sorry. Anyone else with a comment?
Hey, Barb, I think
Yeah.
it's kind of a unique plan in that it has a lot more detail than really what they're asking for. And I think Jack's adding that words that specify that this is only for the bank and associated stormwater management systems for that is the way we have to go. There's this parcel as built out is untenable. I mean, it's got way too much impervious coverage. They're building right up to the 40 foot of a stream because I guess the DEP said that's what they can do. Our regs are 80. The state's now 100. So they ought to be aware that when they develop the rest of this property, it's got to be a little more environmentally friendly than what they show as a build out now. That's my only comment.
Well, I think I had also heard, you know, the concern of what increased stormwater from that impervious would do to the stream channel downstream of the point at which the stormwater enters. So that would be a thing to address as part of that, part of future build out.
Well, you think about when they put together the overall plan for Buckland, they probably didn't know about hydrodynamic separators or even the latest version, which is what they're proposing, which is even better. So you wonder what they were thinking, but this system will work for the bank, and if that's what we're going to rule on, then, you know, I'm okay with it.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no other comment, shall I call for question? No, seeing no further comments, I'll call for a vote on the motion as presented, which is to approve the application with the 3 conditions. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? See no one opposed. And is anyone abstaining? I see no one abstaining. So then the motion carries unanimously and the application is granted.
Thank you.
I want to thank the applicant for the presentation, the commission for your attention.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you all very much for your time.
You're welcome.
All right. I guess we'll be leaving if you don't need us, the application and applicant anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
We're all have a good set. Night.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks.
You are welcome to stay, but not required.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. All right. Old business. I see none. Other business. I see none. Sorry. Someone?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, you're going to skip everything. All right, go for it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Good night, all.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Jeff, good night. Jeff, I hope your day went well. I'll catch up with you.